I want to just bring fun to Star Wars. I just want it to be fun.
Welcome to Unleashed. And don't forget to join us on Patreon for early access and exclusive content. Here are the guys.
Star Wars, I love it. But sometimes it'd be super serious. Sometimes it'd be like way too serious. And it's like everything that has to do with the Skywalker is like so serious.
Everything.
That's Donald Glover with the Wall Street Journal right there. I watched that video, fun video. I was going to talk about that video. And while I was gathering my thoughts and some information and whatnot, I opted to go on Twitter for whatever reason. And when I got to Twitter, I saw this tweet right here. There. From Star Wars Meg. A quote tweet from Star Wars Meg. Damn, heartbreak. A lot of fans are feeling this right now. And this original tweet comes from Palpa Memes. Palpa Memes at Palpa Memes YT. It's crazy how Star Wars used to be my entire life, and now I have almost no interest in the franchise anymore. And that's Meg's point is damn, a lot of fans are feeling this right now. And I've talked to a lot of fans, non-fans, casual fans, who kind of have this mentality as well, this sentimentality. They feel this way. They feel like Star Wars has abandoned them almost. They never abandoned Star Wars, but Star Wars abandoned them. And I talked to a few of them, and you ask questions. And I haven't talked to everybody because I did this video very quickly after reading this. But I talked to a lot of friends, text message and whatnot. And you get the answers, and most of it seems to stem from a few things. Before I got into all that, let's keep in mind that a show just ended, was canceled. And I know people hate me when I say this, but I'm not totally against the cancellation of that show because the ratings weren't there, and that's just what happens. It cost a lot of money. Nobody watched it. It's canceled. This is just the way television has worked forever. How many movies they're like, we're going to do a sequel, and the movie bombs and no sequel ever comes to fruition, right? This is just the reality of the situation. If you're a big fan of it, it sucks. That's fine. You're allowed to feel that way, but it is what it is. And I think it's best at this point just to move on. Hope that maybe we get some things fleshed out from the end in other TV or movies, but just knowing that what we got is over. But look, a video game came out. I don't know when, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I had a friend who doesn't even care for Star Wars. He comes to see the movies with us. That's all the Star Wars. I don't think he's ever watched a Star Wars Beyond with me and Brock. Like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't care. But he was intrigued in the Star Wars game, and I think because of the Star Wars brand around it. I think he's like, oh, it's Star Wars. And we had fun. He played Battlefront with me. He had fun with Battlefront. It's not necessarily his favorite type of game, but he had fun with it. We had a lot of fun playing it together. And so I think the Star Wars name actually still carries some weight for normies, if you will. I don't think it is what it was, and it's obviously not guaranteed weight. I think he went out and bought Fallen Order, not Survivor, but Fallen Order without knowing much. But yeah, so I think for normies, obviously Star Wars has some weight to it still, but for the hardcore fans like Palpa Memes here, it's starting to lose its luster a little bit, if you will. And a lot of a lot of Star Wars fans are blaming that to the poor quality of content that has been spewed out from Disney. Obviously, you hear the buzzwords DEI, SJW, identity politics, all these things coming out, which I am saying to boost the algorithm. But these are things that come out, and people say these, and off of social media, some of the texts I got back mention to a degree those words. They weren't happy with some of the decisions that were being made for the most part. And that's what it seems to be. It seems to be a lot of decision making. And the biggest decision, of course, of course, is that when you have a property like Star Wars, where we got Star Wars in 1977, 1980, and 1983, and then we got it every 3 years after The Phantom Menace, and then we didn't get it again for 10 years, and then it was shoved down our throats at an uncontrollable pace. We got a movie, we got a movie, we got a movie. Then we got Solo right away, and Solo didn't do well. And then we did, a year and a half later, we got Rise of Skywalker, and we haven't got a movie since. But then we got Mando, and Mando season 1 was awesome. And I know there's revisionist history where people don't like it, but it was like a palate cleanser. We got into Mando, we got into this Mando verse, and pretty much everybody was on board with this. It was fun, fresh take. It felt Star Wars. It also felt a little bit enough removed. It wasn't being called the Disney Star Wars at the time. We had this character that, was Mandalorian, looked like Boba Fett, was really super cool looking with a baby Yoda. So we had Yoda and Boba Fett going on a little adventure together, and it was a lot of fun, and everybody was on board. And every week we're like, what shenanigans are they going to get into this week? But then, in between season 1 and season 2, an interview came out with Bob Iger. I don't have it here. I wish I did. An interview came out with Bob Iger. And I'll paraphrase. And if I find it, I'll put it up. Should have done this live. But in it, he said they're going to bring characters in. And essentially, some of those characters are going to be used for spin-offs. Now, right away, we got Bo-Katan. It's like, oh, so Bo-Katan spin-off. That wasn't the case. But we ended up getting an Ahsoka spinoff and a Boba Fett spinoff. And both of those characters, I know Boba Fett was technically introduced in season 1 of The Mandalorian, but really, Boba Fett was introduced in season 2 of The Mandalorian. And then you have Ahsoka Tano being introduced in The Mandalorian. So all of a sudden, even though everybody loves Mandalorian season 2 now, it wasn't as well received as season 1. I think people forget. I think that Luke ending, I think we gravitate to that Luke ending, and we're like, yeah, that Luke ending was sick. And it was amazing. It's fantastic. But the season leading up to it, I remember doing the podcast, and people weren't really that happy with it. They felt like meh, short episode. Episode 1 of that season, I think was an hour. But for the most part, people were a little let down with season 2. But people forget that interview with Bob Iger. And with every show we've gotten since, that Iger comment just is always at the forefront of my mind, because we seem to get like, okay, well, these are the directions we're going. And then we finally get to Ahsoka, which just felt like a whole bunch of, it was Rebels season 2 or season whatever in live action. And I know a lot of friends who never watched Rebels who don't care about that stuff. They're like, I don't know. They had no interest really in Ahsoka. They knew Ahsoka, so they were intrigued in that respect. But when it came to Sabine and finding Ezra, there was no connection with that. So most fans just weren't not fans. So most like normies weren't really on board. They tried to get on board, and I think it's subjective at that point whether or not you did. But again, for me, that season felt so incomplete. It felt like, it needed a season 2, but there was no guarantee of a season 2. We weren't told there would be one. So when it ended, it was just like, well, what who cares? You had Balin Skull and Shin Hati, who I think were two of the best characters. They're two of the best characters we've gotten probably in the Disney era. Well, potential. They have the potential to be that. But then it was like that last episode, they kind of just forgot about them. And I understand that wasn't their episode, but when there's no guarantee of a next season, you got to do something to somewhat wrap up what their purpose was in that show. And you get that. And then you get Andor, and Andor is the one that, a lot of people praise it as the best, but the ratings weren't there. The ratings, they were, that was before Ahsoka, but whatever. The ratings weren't there for Andor. People, I think normies were like, well, this guy just dies. Why do I care? And then the hardcore fans, half of them were like, this isn't Star Wars, and half of them were like, this is better than Star Wars. And the tonal shifts, not being indecisive of what you are as a franchise, on top of there being no directive. There's no clear plan. The MCU was strongest when everyone knew where it was going, or had faith that the powers that be knew where it was going. Phase 4 or 5, whatever the hell that phase was. I think people lost faith because they felt like it was directionless. Nothing was really adding up. They didn't understand. So when you're going on a journey, you want to know the destination. It doesn't really matter how you get there, and it can flip-flop and change any way it wants, but you want to have faith that the pilot knows where they're going. And right now in Star Wars, I don't think people have faith that the pilots know where they're going, and so that kind of takes you out of it. Someone commented on a video we did last week, because I was talking about how much fun theory videos were to do. Theory videos were a blast. We would do them. We'd have fun. We'd joke around. Who is Snoke? Whatever. Have a great time. and that kind of died mostly after The Last Jedi. I did go back. And I saw that a bunch of videos from a Mandalorian season 3. Theory videos from Mandalorian season 3 were a lot of fun. And I know a lot of people didn't like that season, and that's all subjective and that's fine and that's fair. But people were invested, and I think they also believed, because the first two, especially the first season, but the first two seasons of that show had people believing, like, okay, this show has promise. I know, I have an understand that they know where they're going. So it made theories a lot more plausible and a lot more fun, because things can pan out. When you're making things as you go along, it's harder. It's not as fun to theorize, because you're like, well, what's the point? They don't even know. They're not paying attention to what they're doing. And that's hurt. That's hurt a lot. Theories are a big part of Star Wars. Whether Disney, whether the hardcore fans, normies, everyone wants to admit it. It's a big part of the speculation, is having fun going into it. Is Kylo Ren Luke Skywalker? No, of course not. But you can make that stupid case for it before the movie comes out, and it's a lot of fun. And that kind of was washed away. And I think to Donald Glover's point at the beginning, is Star Wars is fun. He goes on to say how, like, it's not, the Skywalker stuff is too serious. I think people take it too serious, and I think people probably at Lucasfilm take the Skywalker stuff way too seriously. I've said this from the beginning of time of the Lucasfilm purchase anyway, that you really saw it after Last Jedi, but they overvalued Luke. The Michael Arndt interviews before it came out, how every time Luke Skywalker came on screen, it took away from the scene. All anybody wanted to pay attention to was Luke. It's like, but that's not the case. I know the diehard fans are all like, Luke is the best, Luke is the best, Luke is the best. But in the movie, this is the problem, is in the movies, Luke is not, I mean, he is, but he is not the best to everybody around him. He doesn't showboat for anybody around him. I mean, Han and Leia, a little, like, but they're like in their tight knit circle. In Return of the Jedi, no one knows where he is. There's not like a big deal, like Luke is up there fighting Vader and the Emperor. Like, that doesn't happen. People think he's on Endor with his homies. Think he's having a good time with the Ewoks, having a picnic, enjoying life. So where is the fun? Why isn't it fun? How can it be fun? I think Bob Iger said they're only going to stick to one Disney Plus show a year, but we're getting 2 movies coming out. I think stop announcing crap. Flat out stop. It's not, I don't want to say they're lying, but they're not being honest. They're being disingenuous. So stop it. Don't tell me you're doing a movie. I don't believe you now. That's part of it. I don't believe you anymore. And it seems like every time you go online, negative, positive videos, whatever it is, it sounds like there's just too many cooks in that Star Wars kitchen. Maybe let someone just do a job. And if it turns out, like The Last Jedi, and fans hate it, well, you swung and you missed. And the next one, maybe you find someone else to do it if you want, or you stick with that. But the Acolyte, you also told us the Acolyte was going to be one thing and ended up being something else. And we're going to do a lot of videos on the Acolyte, because I think it had a lot of hits and a lot of misses. And I think it was both ways. And it's kind of like, it's a weird show in a lot of respects. But that's what it is. It's like, we've had so much shows thrown at us, shoved in our faces. Some of them felt, the Mandalorian stuff all kind of felt like it knew what it was doing. And some of them felt like it didn't have any clue. And they have Book of Boba Fett, which I love the Book of Boba Fett. But what's the point of the Book of Boba Fett? In the grand scheme of things, it's a nice side story. And I think they should have called it Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett or whatever. But it's a side story. And I've said this before. It's a book I would have read in the 90s. That's all that was. And that's fine. And you move on. I think you could use that to make the character a stronger, a better leader, if you need the character to lead in a story going forward. But Darth Maul, Kira, and Solo, they just show up and then stop. They just stop. It's like and when you start doing this and you continue to do it, your audience loses faith, and all of a sudden, the joy and the excitement you had for Star Wars starts to dwindle, and they start to throw more at you and throw more at you and throw more at you. And now, not only are you getting annoyed with this thing's getting cut short, but now it's becoming too common. There's too much of it. It's not special anymore. It's just not. You're always getting Star Wars, and it's always a different Star Wars. I almost think it might have been stronger if they just did Mandalorian. And like I said, call Book of Boba Fett Mandalorian, but don't worry about Ahsoka. Don't worry about this and that. I know they're trying to do it, but then Andor, There's so many different timelines now. Are people invested? Star Wars, again, people like to complain, oh, it doesn't have to always be about the Skywalkers, and it doesn't. But I think it needs to be about something. It shouldn't just be like we'll make it about everything. It has to. Disney Star Wars, the Disney era of Star Wars has to find its heart and soul. What is it? If it's Rey, and don't want to piss off any of you Rey haters, but if it's Rey, then give us Rey. Then give us Rey. I'm fine with that. Give us Rey. There are things they can do, I think, to change Palpatine's point of view here, which Star Wars Mag is saying that a lot of fans are, and I've said, I've seen a lot, and before we came on, I texted out to a bunch of people. You're doing a lot. I think the quality is a big one. I think there are like the people who just love all things Star Wars, like, well, quality is always good. But I think, and I've liked the volume, but again, the volume, there are times when you're like, you're too isolated. And they have massive budgets, so they have to figure something out there. But the Mando and Grogu movie is a step in the right direction. I've said this so many times. I'm going to continue to say it. It's a step in the right direction. I'm very much looking forward to it. And it's only going to cost 120 mil, 110 or 120 mil. So that's might be 110 mil. It's going to cost nothing. It's going to make the money back opening weekend is what I'm saying and guaranteeing. And I think if that movie is fun and is a joyous romp, then I think we have a chance to get that excitement level back up to where it once was all those many, many Tatooine suns ago, bright moons ago, rising moons, bright suns rising. Someone will comment, correct me in the chat. I think we have potential to go there. I'll do another video where I'm going to talk about what I think can be done because I know all. I am the gatekeeper. By the way, that's a big thing. I should say that before I leave. Gatekeeping. If you are on social media and you have any kind of connection to Star Wars, whether it be a positive connection or a negative connection, the amount of gatekeeping that goes on around there is insane. Insane. And I don't think people realize what they're doing either. I think to be honest, a lot of it comes from a genuine place, and it's just kind of gets out of hand. But we'll wrap it up right there. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Comment away. You gotta comment your thoughts. Has Star Wars lost its luster with you? What would it take to get it back? Are you looking forward to any future Star Wars at all? Or have you moved on to a better franchise? Like, I don't know one off the top of my head that is even funny to mention right now. Thanks everybody for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. May the force of others be with you.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.